He knew that scarf. He bought it for her 4 years ago, on their first not-a-date date, when he pretended to be just a friend taking her out for coffee. Logan's hand moved before his brain caught up, crushing the cigarette he'd just lit against the concrete pillar beside him. He'd started smoking 3 years ago, the week after she left town. A habit he'd picked up as a crutch, one he couldn't seem to shake despite telling himself every single morning that today would be the day he quit. Mia didn't see him at first. She was focused on the rideshare pickup zone, pulling out her phone to request a car. Her movements were economical, efficient, like she'd learned to take up as little space as possible. Hey, he stepped forward, his voice coming out rougher than he'd intended. Mia. She froze. The phone in her hand went still, her thumb hovering over the screen. For a long moment, she didn't look up. Then, slowly, she raised her eyes to meet his. God, those eyes, the same Hazel he'd been obsessed with since high school, the same ones that had looked at him with such open, trusting adoration that he'd felt like the center of the universe. But now they were cold, guarded. The warmth he remembered had been replaced by something flat and careful, like she'd built walls around herself and wasn't about to let anyone climb over them. Logan. Her voice was quiet, controlled. Not surprised. Not pleased. Just neutral. It's been a while. He stepped closer, and she stepped back. The movement was subtle, but unmistakable. A clear signal that she didn't want him in her personal space. What are you doing here? She asked, her eyes flicking past him toward the doors. Waiting for someone? Chloe, he said, the name coming out automatically. She's coming in from Portland. Mia's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture. Her shoulders squared slightly, her chin lifted. Right. Your girlfriend. He heard the weight behind those words. The history. The wounds he'd inflicted that had never quite healed. I need to talk to you, he said, moving to block her path to the rideshare pickup lane. Just for a minute. I don't think that's a good idea. Please, Mia. He hated how desperate he sounded. 3 years of telling himself he'd moved on, and here he was, begging for 5 minutes of her attention like a high school kid all over again. She studied him for a long moment, her face unreadable, then she sighed, a small exhale of resignation. I don't have a minute. My parents are expecting me, and I have a flight back to Seattle tomorrow morning. Tomorrow? The word came out sharper than he'd intended. You're just passing through? I live in Seattle now, Logan. That's not news. No, it wasn't news. He'd known she'd left town and gone north. He'd just never expected her to come back. Not after what he'd done. He grabbed her wrist before he could stop himself, his fingers closing around the thin bones of her arm. She flinched, and the reaction hit him like a knife to the gut. She'd never flinched from him before. She'd always trusted him implicitly, even when he didn't deserve it. Listen, he said, his voice low and urgent. I know I don't have any right to ask this, but I need you to come with me. Just for a few minutes. I'll drive you home afterward. Please. She looked down at his hand on her wrist, then back up at his face. Let go of me. He released her immediately, holding his hands up in surrender. I'm not trying to force you. I need to explain. There are things you don't know. I know exactly what I need to know. Her voice was flat, empty of emotion. You had a girlfriend. You lied about it. You let me make a fool of myself in front of everyone I knew. You told me I was nothing to you and a story. That's not what I said. You don't get to rewrite history. She took a step back, putting more distance between them. What happened. I've moved on. You should too. I can't move on. The words came out raw, honest in a way he hadn't intended. Mia, I made a mistake. 3 years of mistakes, you mean? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You had 3 years to say something. You didn't. You don't get to show up now and pretend you suddenly care. She started to walk away, and panic seized him. He reached out again, this time grabbing her arm more firmly. Wait. A voice cut through the air behind him. What the hell is going on here? Logan turned to find Chloe Mitchell standing a few feet away, a suitcase in one hand, and a look of pure fury on her face. She'd clearly just come through the doors and had witnessed enough to draw her own conclusions. Chloe, it's not what you think. Not what I think. Chloe stormed toward them, her heels clicking angrily against the concrete. I've been gone for 2 weeks, and the first thing I see when I get back is you grabbing some woman at the airport. She shoved the suitcase toward him, forcing him to catch it or let it fall. Who the hell is this? Mia had gone very still, her face pale beneath the fluorescent lights. She pulled her scarf up higher, as if she could disappear behind it. Chloe's eyes narrowed as she studied the woman in front of her. Then her expression shifted, recognition dawning. Oh, I know who you are. You're that girl from years ago. The one who... Don't. Logan stepped between them, positioning himself in front of Mia. Just don't. Chloe's jaw dropped. Are you seriously defending her? The woman who almost ruined our relationship. We weren't even together when that happened, Logan said, his voice tight. You know that. Oh, I know plenty. Chloe's laugh was sharp and bitter. I know you couldn't stop talking about her for months, and I know you went to Seattle to find her. I know you've been mooning over some fantasy version of her while pretending to be with me. Mia stepped out from behind him, her expression guarded. I think I should go. You think? Chloe laughed again, the sound grating. You show up here and start drama with my boyfriend, and you think you can just walk away? Chloe, enough. Logan caught her arm, trying to pull her back. This isn't her fault. I was the one who stopped her. She was trying to leave. Of course she was. Chloe shook him off, her eyes still fixed on Mia. That's what she does, right? Plays the victim. Acts like she's the one who got hurt. Never mind that she was the one who made everything public and made you look like a monster. Because he is a monster. The words burst out of Mia, her composure finally cracking. He lied to me. He made me fall in love with him, and the whole time, he had a girlfriend he was hiding. He let me plan this stupid, elaborate confession, and then he let me get humiliated in front of everyone. I stopped you before it got that bad. You hit me. Mia's voice rose, raw and shaking. You shoved me and called me worthless and told me to get out of your life. For 3 years, I've had to live with that. I've had to rebuild everything from scratch, and you think a few words at an airport can fix that? Chloe's face had gone pale. She turned to Logan, her expression shifting from anger to something colder, more calculating. You didn't tell me you hit her. There are a lot of things I didn't tell you, Logan muttered. The words hung in the air between them. For a moment, no one moved. Then Chloe picked up her suitcase, the wheels scraping against the pavement as she turned away from both of them. I'm going home. Alone, and you better have a good explanation ready by the time I get there. She walked away without looking back. Logan watched her go, a hollow feeling settling in his chest. He should have felt relieved. He'd been wanting to end things with Chloe for months, a relationship that had run its course long before the final blow. But the way it had happened, the way he'd been caught red-handed with the woman who still haunted his dreams. Are you happy now? Mia's voice cut through his thoughts, cold and accusing. He turned to find her staring at him with a mixture of contempt and something else, something he'd never expected to see in her eyes. I didn't plan any of this, he said, running a hand through his hair. I just saw you, and I lost my head. You always lose your head around me. Her voice was flat. You lose your head, and then you break my heart. It's become a pattern. She started walking toward the taxi stand. Logan followed, matching her pace. Mia, please, let me drive you home. We can talk. I can explain. There's nothing to explain. She kept walking. What happened. You made your choices. I made mine. We're done. Are we? He caught her arm again, but this time she stopped. Her eyes met his with a fierceness that made him pause. Logan, let me be very clear. She shook off his hand, stepping back to create distance between them. I don't care about you, Dad. I don't care about your girlfriend or your feelings or your guilt. I've spent 3 years learning to not care about you, and I've gotten very good at IT. So take your apology and your explanations and your dramatic airport scenes, and leave me alone. She turned away, hailing a taxi with the efficiency of someone who'd done it 100 times before. Within moments, she was in the back seat, the door closing between them. Logan stood there, watching the car pull away, and felt something inside him crack. He'd expected her to be angry. He'd expected tears, accusations, maybe even a slap. All of that he could have handled. But this cold indifference, this absolute lack of emotion, this was something he hadn't prepared for. She'd really moved on. The thought hit him like a physical blow. He'd always assumed, deep down, that she still loved him, that he could show up and say the right words, and she'd come back. That their history, their years of friendship and slow burn attraction, would eventually bring her back to him. But the look in her eyes just now hadn't been longing. It had been indifference. The kind of complete disinterest you feel for someone you've truly stopped caring about. He was standing in the middle of the pickup zone, people streaming around him, when his phone buzzed. A text from Chloe. Don't bother coming home tonight. I need space. Logan stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he typed back a single word. Fine. It was easier than fighting, easier than trying to salvage something that had been dead for months. He wasn't sure why he'd stayed with Chloe so long, except that it was comfortable, familiar. She'd been there when Mia left, and he'd convinced himself that convenience was enough. He was wrong, but it was too late to fix anything with Mia. She'd made that perfectly clear. He found a bench near the terminal and sat down heavily, his mind churning through memories he'd spent 3 years trying to suppress. The way she'd looked at him after she'd found out about Chloe. The blood on the pavement, the screaming, the hit he'd never, ever should have thrown. The absolute devastation in her eyes as she'd walked away from the hospital, carrying the weight of everything he'd done. He remembered the recording, the audio file she'd sent to their entire friend group, their families, her coworkers, the school where she taught. Everyone heard the things he'd said about her, the cruel and dismissive things he'd only said because he thought no one was listening. It had been a masterpiece of revenge, public, brutal, and entirely earned. He should have hated her for it. Instead, it had been the first time he'd felt truly seen. He'd spent years pretending to be someone he wasn't, and she'd exposed the real him to everyone. And somehow, instead of being angry, he'd felt relieved. That was when he knew, when he realized that the person he'd hurt was the only person who'd ever truly known him. And now he'd lost her forever. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from a number he didn't recognize. He almost let it go to voicemail, but something made him answer. Logan Carter. Hi, Logan. This is your sister, Laura. I'm at the hospital. Mom had a small stroke. She's stable now, but it's serious. We're trying to track down everyone on her emergency contact list. Logan's stomach dropped. What? I just saw her last week. She was fine. She was hiding symptoms. You know how she is. Laura's voice was strained. The doctors say she's responding to treatment, but we need to make decisions. I need you here. I'll be there tonight. He was already on his feet, heading toward the parking garage. Just tell me what to do. Come quickly. And Logan. Laura paused. Bring Mia if you can. She's still her favorite, you know. Mom's been asking for her. Logan's hand tightened on the phone. Mia left town. She's not answering my calls. Then I don't know what to tell you. Mom keeps repeating her name. It's the first thing she says when she wakes up. The line went dead. Logan stood in the parking garage, the phone still pressed to his ear, and felt the weight of the world bearing down on him. His mother was dying. The woman who'd always defended Mia, who'd been heartbroken when she left, who'd told him repeatedly that he'd made the worst mistake of his life. And now she was asking for Mia. He had to find her. He had to bring her back. Even if she never forgave him, even if she refused, he had to try. He started walking toward his car, his mind already racing through options. She'd said she was flying back to Seattle tomorrow morning. That meant she was staying at her parents' house tonight, which meant he knew exactly where to find her. Mia pulled up to her parents' house just as the sky was starting to darken. The familiar two-story colonial sat at the end of a quiet suburban street, Christmas lights still twinkling on the eaves despite the fact that it was well past the holiday season. The sight of it made her throat tighten. She'd been away so long, 3 years of avoiding home, of pretending she'd moved on completely. But the moment she stepped out of the car and smelled the familiar scent of winter air and wood smoke, all the walls she'd built started to crack. Her mother came running out the front door, her arms open wide, wrapping Mia in a tight hug that smelled like cinnamon and her grandmother's old perfume. "Baby, you're home. We were so worried. Your flight was supposed to be hours ago. Did you get a new phone? I kept calling and it went straight to voicemail." Mia smiled, the expression feeling foreign on her face after the emotional whiplash of the afternoon. "I ran into someone at the airport. It got a little complicated." Someone? More than someone. The someone. The person she'd spent 3 years pretending didn't exist. Logan. Her mother's voice was sharp, knowing. "Did you see Logan?" "Mom, can we not do this right now? I just got here." Of course. We'll talk later. But I need to know, and so does your father. Are you okay? Did he hurt you? Because if he did..." "Mom, I'm fine. He's fine. We talked, and now I never want to talk to him again." Mia forced a laugh, the sound hollow. Same as it always was. Her mother studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, come inside. We have dinner waiting, and your father's been looking forward to seeing you." The evening passed in a blur of forced smiles and small talk. Mia's father asked about her job, her apartment, her life in Seattle, all the things she'd carefully crafted to avoid talking about the real issue. She brought them out to visit 3 times in the past 2 years, but she always insisted they come to her. She'd never been ready to come back, not really. But now she was here, and everything felt wrong. The house was the same, her parents were the same, but she was different. Changed in ways she couldn't even articulate, in ways that made this place feel like a museum of her former self, carefully preserved for someone who no longer existed. After dinner, she excused herself to her childhood bedroom, the same room she'd grown up in, with the same faded wallpaper and creaky floorboards. She lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, and replayed the afternoon's events over and over in her head. She'd been so proud of herself, so controlled, so cold, so completely unbothered by Logan's sudden reappearance in her life. She told him exactly what he needed to hear, had walked away with her head held high. But she was lying. Not to him. She was definitely done with him, no question about that, but to herself. Because the moment she'd seen him at the station, the moment their eyes had met across the crowded terminal, something had shifted inside her. Something she'd spent 3 years trying to bury had clawed its way to the surface, and it was terrifying. She still wanted him. Not the version of him who existed now, the man with the guilty eyes and the desperate apologies. She wanted the version she'd fallen in love with. The one who'd been her best friend, her confidant, the one person in the world who could make her feel like she was the only person in the room. But that version had never really existed. She knew that now, had seen the proof in his own words. He'd been playing a game, and she'd been the pawn. And yet, somehow, knowing all of that didn't make the wanting go away. The knock on her door startled her out of her spiraling thoughts. "Come in." Her mother pushed the door open, a plate of cookies in one hand and a cup of tea in the other. She set them on the nightstand, then sat on the edge of the bed. "You're thinking about him." "I'm thinking about a lot of things. Your father and I, we saw the way you looked when you came in tonight." Her mother's voice was gentle, but firm. "We've spent years watching you try to move on, and we thought you were doing better. But I can tell, baby, whatever happened today, he's still in your head." Mia closed her eyes, willing herself not to cry. "I don't want him in my head. I don't want to feel anything about him at all. But the second I saw him, all that old stuff just came rushing back." "That's normal." "Is it? Because it feels insane. He lied to me. He used me. He literally hit me. And I still..." She broke off, her voice cracking. "You still love the person you thought he was." Her mother reached out, brushing a strand of hair from Mia's face. "That's not the same as loving him. And you know that now. That's what matters." Mia nodded, though the gesture felt hollow. "I know, but it doesn't make it hurt any less." Her mother hugged her tightly, the way she had when Mia was a little girl and had scraped her knee on the playground. "You're going to be okay, baby. I promise. You're stronger than you think." She stayed for a few more minutes, then left Mia alone with her thoughts and the tea she wasn't going to drink. Mia stared at the ceiling for another hour, her mind racing, before exhaustion finally pulled her under. The next morning, she woke to the sound of her mother's voice in the kitchen, followed by another voice, a male voice, one that made her blood run cold. She threw on the nearest robe and padded downstairs, her heart pounding in her chest. Logan was standing in the middle of the kitchen, a cup of coffee in his hand, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes met hers the moment she appeared, and the expression on his face was almost desperate. IT made her want to run. "Mia, please. I need to talk to you. I don't want to hear anything you have to say." "Your mother called me." Logan held up his phone. "She said your father was in some kind of distress. I came as soon as I got the message." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded document. His hands were shaking slightly as he held it out to her. It was a letter with official letterhead. A letter from a law firm. "Your father died last night. He had a heart attack around midnight. I'm the one who found him." Mia stared at the letter. She stared at Logan. She stared at her mother, who was weeping softly in the corner of the kitchen. "Dad." He left a note. Logan's voice was hoarse. "He wanted to tell you something. Something about your mother. Something about the truth." Mia grabbed the letter, her hands trembling as she unfolded it and read the words that would change everything. I stared at the paper in my hands, reading the same words over and over until they blurred into meaningless shapes. To my daughter, Mia. If you're reading this, I'm gone. There are things I should have told you long ago, things I was too afraid or too proud to say. But you deserve to know the truth. Your mother and I have been keeping a secret from you. It's about the night you left town, the night everything fell apart. There was more to what happened than you know, and I'm sorry I never found the courage to tell you while I was alive. I've left a safety deposit box at the bank downtown. The key is in my study, behind the painting of the lake. It contains documents that will explain everything. I love you. I've always loved you. And I'm so sorry I failed you. Dad. The paper shook in my hands. I looked up at my mother, who was still crying in the corner, her face buried in her hands. Then I looked at Logan, who was watching me with an expression I couldn't read. Did you read this? My voice came out flat, distant, like it belonged to someone else. I only read the first few lines, enough to know it was important. Logan's hands were shoved in his pockets, his shoulders hunched. He looked smaller than I remembered, diminished somehow. Your mother called me this morning. She was hysterical. She said there'd been an accident, that your father had collapsed, that they needed help. I was the closest person she could reach. Because my phone was off. My mother's voice came from behind me, thin and brittle. I tried to call you honey, but it went straight to voicemail. I didn't know what else to do. I turned my phone off last night. I wanted to be unreachable, to have one night of peace before I flew back to Seattle and pretended my family didn't exist for another 3 years. And now my father was dead, and I'd missed his last moments because I was too busy wallowing in my own self-pity. The guilt hit me like a punch to the chest. What happened? I managed, my voice cracking. What really happened? My mother's sobs grew louder. Logan stepped forward, his hand reaching out as if to steady me, then stopping short. The paramedics said it was a massive heart attack. He didn't suffer. It was quick. How do you know? How do you know he didn't suffer? I was here, Mia, and I found him. Logan's voice was raw, unguarded. I was driving by, and I saw the lights on, and I knew something was wrong. Did I let myself in through the back door? He was on the floor in the living room. He was already gone by the time I got here. My mother wailed, the sound piercing through me like a knife. I rushed to her side, wrapping my arms around her, trying to hold her together. She was shaking uncontrollably, her thin body trembling in my arms. You shouldn't have been the one to find him, I whispered, my voice hollow. He was your husband. I should have been here. I should have answered the phone. He wanted you to know the truth, my mother said between sobs. He'd been trying to tell you for years, but he was afraid. We both were. What truth? My mother lifted her head, her red-rimmed eyes meeting mine. The truth about the night you left, about the accident that happened at the hospital, about what your father and I helped cover up. I felt the world tilt underneath me. What are you talking about? Go to the bank. She pulled away, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Get the safety deposit box. Everything you need is in there. Mom, I need you to tell me what's going on. I can't. She shook her head, her face crumpling. I just can't. Not right now. Please, Mia. Just go. I need some time. I wanted to argue. I wanted to demand answers. But one look at her face told me she was done. She'd reached her limit, and pushing her any further would only make things worse. Okay. I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady. I'll go. But I'm coming back. We're going to talk about this. She nodded wordlessly, then turned away, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I grabbed my coat from the hook by the door, pulling it on with shaking hands. Logan was still standing in the kitchen, watching me with that same unreadable expression. I'm coming with you. No, you're not. I found him, Mia. I was the last person to talk to him. Maybe that means I should be there when you find out whatever he left behind. Logan, I appreciate that you were here. I appreciate that you helped. But this is my family's business. I don't need you involved in it. He stepped closer, his voice dropping low. You think I don't know what this is about? You think I don't already have my suspicions? I froze. What are you talking about? Your father and I had a conversation 3 years ago, the week before you left. Logan's eyes were dark, troubled. He came to my house. He told me he knew about the whole thing. About Chloe, about the recording, about how everything went down. What did he say? He said he was sorry. He said he wished he'd stepped in sooner. Logan paused, his jaw tightening. And then he told me something that made no sense at the time. He said the accident at the hospital wasn't really an accident, that someone had caused it. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? Who? Logan shook his head. He wouldn't say. He said he needed to protect someone. But he made it clear that Chloe's miscarriage wasn't a random tragedy. It was deliberate. My mind raced, trying to process this. That's impossible. Chloe was the one who fell. I saw it happen. She tripped on the steps outside your building. She tripped because someone pushed her. Who? I don't know. Your father wouldn't tell me, but he said you were in danger and that he'd do whatever it took to keep you safe. He was acting strange that night. Nervous. Like he was scared of something. Scared of what? Logan's expression was grim. I don't know, but I think whatever he was scared of is in that safety deposit box. We drove to the bank in silence. Logan had insisted on coming, and I was too shaken to argue. The winter morning was gray and cold, the streets empty and quiet. The kind of morning that made everything feel distant and unreal. The bank manager, a woman named Patricia, who'd known my father for 30 years, had called ahead to confirm the key matched the box number. She met us at the door and led us down to the vault, her heels clicking against the marble floor. The box is in the back, she said, her voice professional but subdued. Your father visited regularly, usually every few months. He always looked nervous when he came. I thought it was just his personality, but looking back, I should have said something. Visited regularly? I repeated. He didn't tell me about this. He was a private man. Patricia's expression was sympathetic. He left instructions that the box be opened only by you or your mother. He was very specific about that. She unlocked the box and pulled out a thick manila envelope with my name written in my father's handwriting. She handed it to me with both hands, as if it were sacred. I'll give you some privacy, she said, and walked away. I stared at the envelope in my hands, not quite ready to open it. My fingers were numb, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Open it, Logan said quietly from behind me. You need to know. I tore open the seal and pulled out the contents. The first thing I saw was a photographed picture of my mother and father, taken shortly after they'd gotten married. They were young and smiling, arms wrapped around each other, looking like they had the whole world ahead of them. Underneath the photograph were documents, bank statements, legal papers, and something that made my blood run cold. A medical report. I read the words, my eyes skipping over the clinical language until I found what I was looking for. Mia's mother was never in labor. She had a C-section 0.3 days before the scheduled procedure. Someone broke into the hospital and attempted to steal the baby. The attempt was stopped, but the mother was left with a perforated uterus and the father was diagnosed with a severe case of hepatitis C. It was dated 2 days before I was born. Below that, a death certificate from 3 years ago, for someone I'd never met, someone whose name I didn't recognize. My father's handwriting was scrawled across the bottom. The doctor who saved your mother's life died under suspicious circumstances during the most recent investigation. I believe this was because someone didn't want the truth to come out. This doesn't make sense, I said, my voice trembling. Why would someone try to steal a baby? Why would they kill a doctor to cover it up? Logan read over my shoulder, his breath catching in his throat. Mia, look at the next page. I pulled out another document. This one was a court order from a case that had been sealed for 40 years. A case involving a woman who'd given birth in the same hospital on the same day. Her name, Evelyn Thompson. The name on the death certificate was Evelyn. We have the same last name, I whispered. She was a relative, a cousin maybe, or an aunt. Keep reading, Logan said, his voice urgent. The next page was an adoption document, not for me, for someone else. Someone who'd been born on the same day as me, in the same hospital, taken home by the same parents. My father's note was brief. You have a sister. Her name is Elizabeth. She was kidnapped from the hospital 3 days after you were born. We never found her. The world tilted on its axis. I had a sister who'd been taken, a sister I'd never known about. Why didn't he tell me? The question came out as a choked whisper. Why didn't anyone tell me? There was a reason, Logan said. Your father said he was trying to protect you. Maybe this was what he meant. I felt the room spin around me, but Logan caught me before I could fall. Whoa, easy. His hands gripped my arms, steadying me. Just breathe. I held onto him, not because I wanted to, but because my body was shaking so hard I couldn't stand on my OW, and why father was dead, and why mother had kept a secret from me for 30 years. And somewhere out there, I had a sister who'd been stolen from us. This is insane, I said. This is completely insane. It's the truth, Logan said quietly. Your father wanted you to know. He didn't get a chance to tell you, but he made sure the evidence was here. I pulled away from him and sat down heavily on the bench. My legs wouldn't hold me anymore. I felt hollow, emptied out. He never showed me this. I gestured at the pile of papers in my lap. He never said anything. He let me spend my whole life thinking I was an only child. Maybe he didn't know how to tell you. Maybe he was hoping he could figure out what happened first. Logan sat down beside me, his voice softer now. Mia, look at the other documents. I forced myself to keep reading. Among the legal papers were invoices from private detectives, handwritten notes about a woman named Joanna, and a photograph of a teenage girl who looked just like me. This is her, I said, my voice barely audible. Elizabeth. She was maybe 16 in the photo. Dark hair, small face, the same hazel eyes I saw in the mirror every morning. She was looking at the camera with an expression I recognized all too well, the guarded look of someone who'd learned not to trust the world. I've seen this girl before, Logan said, his voice tight. I looked at him sharply. Where? At the station point 3 years ago. She was there the night of the accident. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but now. He paused, his eyes narrowing. She was outside the building when Chloe fell. She was watching everything unfold. My blood went cold. Why would she be there? I don't know, but if your father was tracking her, she must have known about the connection. Maybe she came looking for answers. I stared at the photograph, my mind racing. If she was there at the station, then she knows who I am. She knows I exist. And she didn't try to contact me. Maybe she was scared. Of what? Logan met my eyes, and I saw something shift in his expression. Something I didn't want to name. Maybe she was scared of whoever took her, he said. Or maybe she was scared of your father. He knew something, Mia, something dangerous enough to get him killed. The word hung in the air between us. Killed. Are you saying my father's death wasn't an accident? I'm saying I found him on the floor of his living room with no signs of forced entry, no sign of struggle, and a letter in his hand written in his own handwriting that said he needed to tell you the truth. Logan's voice was low and intense. I'm not saying someone killed him, but I'm not saying it's impossible. I thought about my father's health, his history of heart problems, his refusal to see a doctor for the past 2 years. It was possible he'd had a heart attack. It was possible he'd died naturally. But it was also possible that someone had wanted to make sure the secret died with him. Here. I stood up abruptly. Elizabeth, I have to find out what happened. Okay, Logan said, rising with me. Let's start by looking into that death certificate. The doctor, who died. There has to be something there. Back in the car, I called my mother. She answered on the first ring, her voice still thick with tears. What did you find? A lot, I said carefully. Mom, I need you to tell me the truth. Did I have a sister? There was a long, loaded pause. Then my mother started to cry again. Her name was Elizabeth. We named her Elizabeth. Her voice was soft, reverent. She was your twin sister, Mia. You were born together, and we were told you were both healthy. But 3 days later, she was gone. Someone took her from the nursery. I felt the world tilt again, but this time, I was ready for it. Why didn't you tell me? We were scared. The police said they'd find her. They never did. And then your father started receiving letters, anonymous letters, threatening to hurt you if we ever tried to find her. Who sent them? I don't know. Her voice was barely a whisper. We thought if we kept quiet, you would be safe. But then Logan's mother got sick, and your father started poking around again. He said he was close to finding the truth, and now he's gone. Mom, I'm coming home. We're going to figure this out together.
No, Mia.
You can't. Her voice was suddenly sharp. You need to leave town.
Now.
If your father's death wasn't an accident, they might come for you too. Who are they? I don't know, but promise me you'll be careful. I promise, but I'm not leaving. We're going to get to the bottom of this. She didn't argue. She just hung up. I sat in the passenger seat, the phone clutched in my hand, and tried to remember how to breathe. I need to call your father's lawyer, I said to Logan. There has to be more information somewhere. Wait, Logan's voice was urgent. Look. He nodded toward the street. I followed his gaze and felt my heart stop. Standing across the road was a woman. I recognized her immediately. It was the woman in the photograph. Elizabeth. She was older now, maybe late 20s, but it was unmistakably her. The same dark hair, the same hazel eyes, the same guarded expression. She was holding a newspaper in one hand and looking right at me. She knew I'd found out. She'd been waiting for me. I was out of the car before Logan could stop me, my feet carrying me across the street before my brain caught up with what I was doing. Elizabeth saw me coming and didn't move, didn't run. She just stood there, her newspaper folded under her arm, watching me with those same hazel eyes that stared back at me from the mirror every morning. Up close, the resemblance was uncanny. Same bone structure, same small nose, same way of holding her shoulders tense and guarded. She was thinner than I was, with dark circles under her eyes that suggested she hadn't slept well in a long time. You knew, I said, my voice coming out breathless. You knew who I was this whole time. Elizabeth studied me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she nodded once, slowly. I knew. I've always known. How? How did you find out? The woman who raised me, Joanna, she told me when I was 15, she said I was adopted. She said my birth parents had given me up willingly, but I never believed her. Elizabeth's voice was low, controlled, like someone who'd learned to keep her emotions locked tight. There were too many inconsistencies to NO records of my birth certificate, NO hospital photos. No names of my biological parents. So, you started investigating. I started asking questions, and the people who answered them started turning up dead. She said it flatly, like she was talking about the weather. The doctor who delivered us. The nurse who was on duty that night, MY adoptive mother's lawyer, all dead within 6 months of each other. My stomach lurched. That's why my father was scared. That's why he stopped looking. He never stopped looking. Elizabeth's eyes met mine, fierce and unwavering. He sent private investigators to find me. He tracked down everyone who had any connection to the case. He was getting close to the truth, and someone found out. The heart attack. Wasn't a heart attack. Elizabeth pulled a folded piece of paper from her coat pocket and handed it to me. I got this 3 days ago. It's a coroner's report from your father's autopsy. The preliminary results showed elevated levels of a compound that's used in certain industrial cleaning products, enough to trigger a massive cardiac event in someone with his pre-existing condition. I stared at the paper, my hands shaking. Someone poisoned him. Someone poisoned him to keep him quiet. Elizabeth's voice was grim. The same someone who's been covering up our connection for 30 years. Who? Elizabeth looked past me, toward the car where Logan was still sitting. Something passed between them, a look I couldn't quite read. He doesn't know, she said, answering a question I hadn't asked. Not yet, but he's been helping me. What are you talking about? Logan and I have been in contact for the past 2 years. He called me the night your father told him what happened, and then he started investigating on his own. Elizabeth's mouth tightened. He thought he was helping. He thought he could keep you safe. I turned around, watching Logan through the car window. His face was unreadable, his hands gripping the steering wheel tight. He'd been lying to me for 2 years. He'd been involved in this whole thing behind my back. Get in the car, I said to Elizabeth. We need to have a conversation. All 3 of us. We drove back to my parents' house, the silence in the car thick enough to cut with a knife. Logan didn't say anything, and neither did Elizabeth. They both seemed to be waiting for me to make the first move, to ask the questions that needed to be asked. When we pulled into the driveway, I turned off the engine and faced them both. Start from the beginning, I said. Everything. No more secrets. Elizabeth took a deep breath. The night you found out about Logan and Chloe, the night of the accident, your father was already watching me. He had hired a private investigator who tracked me to the city. He knew I was there, but he didn't know how to approach me. That's when he found out about the threats. Logan added quietly. Someone had been sending him anonymous letters for years, telling him to stop looking. They escalated the closer he got to the truth. The night you left town, Elizabeth continued, I came to your school. I wanted to see you, to see what you looked like, but I lost my nerve. I started following you instead. You followed me to Logan's building. I followed you to his building, and I saw the whole thing. The declaration, the girl coming downstairs, the argument, the fall. Elizabeth's voice dropped. I saw someone push her from the top of a landing, a woman in a long coat. I didn't see her face, but I saw her walk away afterward. She didn't run. She just walked like she'd done it before. My mind raced back to that night. I'd seen the girl fall, Chloe, and I'd assumed it was an accident. The stairs were narrow. The lighting was bad. She tripped, I thought. It had to have been a trip. But if someone pushed her... Who? I ask. Who pushed her? The woman who had a lot to lose if your father kept investigating, Elizabeth said. The woman who'd been covering up my kidnapping for 30 years. The woman who orchestrated the whole thing. Logan cleared his throat. I think I know who it is. We both looked at him. Your mother's sister, he said. Your aunt, Catherine. She's been acting as your mother's personal assistant for years, but she's the one who was running the family's finances. She's the one who had access to everything your father was investigating. My aunt. I stared at him in disbelief. That's insane. She's been part of our family my whole life. She's the one who... I trailed off, my blood running cold. Who what? She's the one who encouraged me to go to the hospital that night. She was the one who called me and told me I should talk to Chloe. She said it would help me heal. I remembered the conversation, the urgency in my aunt's voice. She was the one who made sure I was there. She was the one who orchestrated the whole thing. But why? Elizabeth asked. Why would she do that? Because she's the one who took me. The words came out flat certain. She took me from the hospital, and she spent the last 30 years trying to make sure no one found out. But why? I repeated. Why would she take her own niece? Logan stepped forward, because she was told to, by someone who had something on her. Someone who wanted to control your family. Who? Logan pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. I've been investigating this for 2 years, Mia, and I think I've finally found the connection. He handed me the phone. Look at the name. I read the name on the screen, and felt the world drop out from under me again. Jennifer Reed, he said. Your mother's business partner. The one who's been quietly buying up your family's properties. The one who was at the hospital the night you were born. She's connected to my aunt? Your aunt and your mother went into business together about a year after Elizabeth was taken, but your aunt didn't know what had happened. She only found out later, and by then, she was in too deep. Logan paused. Jennifer Reed is the person who ordered the kidnapping. She wanted a child to raise as her own. She's the one who paid your aunt to take Elizabeth. But Elizabeth was raised by someone else, I said, confused. She was raised by Joanna. Joanna was a surrogate, Elizabeth said quietly. Jennifer hired her to raise me, but she was never really a mother. I was always meant to be returned to Jennifer when I turned 18. Only Jennifer died of cancer before that happened, and Joanna was left with me. Jennifer Reed. I repeated, the name feeling like poison on my tongue. She's been working with my mother for years. She's been in our lives this whole time. Your mother didn't know, Logan said quickly. She only found out after your father started investigating. That's why she's been so broken. She had to live with the knowledge that her own sister had stolen her child, and she couldn't do anything about it. I looked at Elizabeth, who was watching me with those same hazel eyes. You knew all of this? For how long? 2 years, she admitted. I found out when Logan contacted me. He helped me piece it together. The betrayal hit me like a knife to the chest. You were talking to Logan for 2 years? While I was trying to get over him. While I was rebuilding my life. You were both keeping secrets? Logan stepped forward, reaching for me. Mia, I was trying to protect you. If I told you the truth then, you would have. What? Run off and gotten myself killed. I laughed, but it was hollow. You had no right to make that decision for me. Mia, please. No. I cut him off, stepping back. I need to think. I need to figure out what to do. I sat in my childhood bedroom, staring at the documents spread out on the bed, and tried to process everything I'd learned, and why father had been murdered. My twin sister had been living in the same city I'd been hiding in for 3 years, and the man who'd broken my heart had been working behind the scenes to keep me safe. The irony wasn't lost on me. A knock on the door pulled me out of my spiraling thoughts. Elizabeth opened it and slipped inside, closing it behind her. Can we talk? I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Elizabeth sat on the edge of the bed, her hands folded in her lap. I know this is a lot. I know it's overwhelming, but I want you to know that none of what's happening is your fault. None of it. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No, but it's the truth. Elizabeth sighed. I spent years looking for you, and I thought if I found you, I'd find answers, but I never expected to actually connect with you. You were just this idea. This ghost. And now I'm real. And now you're real. Elizabeth smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her. And I have no idea how to have a sister, but I'd like to learn. I felt my chest tighten. How can you just stand there and act normal after everything that's happened? Because I've had years to process it, Elizabeth said. You've had hours. Give yourself time. She was right, of course, but knowing that didn't make the anger go away. I need to know what my next move is, I said. If Jennifer Reed was behind my father's murder, I want her to pay for what she's done, but I need to be smart about it. Elizabeth nodded. I've been gathering evidence for 2 years. Phone records, financial documents, witness statements. I was waiting for the right moment to come forward, but maybe this is it. Maybe we do it together. Together? Elizabeth's eyes widened. You want to work with me? You're my sister, I said, the words feeling strange on my tongue. I don't have anyone else. Elizabeth reached out and took my hand. Then we do this together. Justice for Dad. And then we figure out the rest. 2 days later, we met with my father's lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Margaret, who'd been handling the family's legal affairs for decades. She laid out the evidence in chronological order, documenting every suspicious death, every anonymous threat, every financial transaction that linked Jennifer Reed to the conspiracy. This is ironclad. Margaret said, tapping the stack of documents. But I need to warn you, going public with this will cause a firestorm. Your mother will be implicated. Your aunt will be arrested. And Jennifer Reed will do everything in her power to destroy your credibility. Let her try, I said. I'm ready. The news broke the next day. Jennifer Reed was arrested at her home in the Hamptons, taken into custody on charges of conspiracy to commit kidnapping, obstruction of justice, and murder in the first degree. My aunt was arrested the following morning, her face crumbling as she was led out of her house in handcuffs. The media had a field day. Headlines screamed about the decades-old kidnapping, the family secrets, the web of lies that had been woven to protect a monster. My mother went into hiding, overwhelmed by the attention. But I didn't care about any of that. All I cared about was the truth. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Jennifer Reed's defense team tried everything, attacking my credibility, attacking Elizabeth's credibility, trying to paint us as unstable and unreliable witnesses. But the evidence was too strong. Phone records showed Jennifer contacting my aunt on the day of the kidnapping. Financial records showed payments to the doctor who'd signed off on Elizabeth's adoption documents. And then Logan took the stand. He'd been helping me prepare for the trial, putting aside our complicated history to focus on the case. But I hadn't expected him to volunteer to testify. He walked into the courtroom in a suit I'd never seen before, his shoulders straight, his chin up. He looked like a man who'd been carrying a weight for years and was finally ready to set it down. Mr. Carter, the prosecutor said, can you tell us about your involvement in this case? I started investigating 2 years ago, Logan said, his voice clear and steady. After Mia's father told me what had happened, I knew I had to help. I didn't know how to reach Mia without raising suspicion, so I reached out to Elizabeth instead. We shared information. We built the case together. Did you ever discuss this with the defendant? No. She was too dangerous. I knew if she found out we were investigating, she'd do exactly what she did to Mia's father. And what was that? Logan's eyes flicked to me for just a moment. She poisoned him. Her own brother-in-law. She sat across from him at family dinners and smiled while she planned his murder. The courtroom went silent. I looked at Jennifer Reed, sitting at the defendant's table in her expensive suit and perfectly styled hair. She didn't react. She didn't even look at me. It was like she was already somewhere else. The verdict came back guilty on all counts. Jennifer Reed was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. My aunt got 15 years for her role in the kidnapping. The day after the trial ended, I stood outside the courthouse, staring up at the gray sky, and felt something shift inside me. Closure, maybe, or just the beginning of something new. Logan approached me cautiously, his hands in his pockets. Are you okay? Define okay. Fair enough. He smiled, the same crooked smile I'd fallen in love with years ago. I know I don't have any right to ask this, but can we talk? I looked at him for a long moment. The man who'd broken my heart. The man who'd hidden the truth from me. The man who'd spent 2 years working to bring justice to my family. I don't know what there is to say, I admitted. How about the truth? Logan stepped closer, his voice low. I was an idiot. Mia, I hurt you, I made terrible choices. And I've spent every day since trying to make up for it, even if I knew you'd never forgive me. Are you asking for forgiveness? I'm asking for a chance. A real chance. Not to fix what I broke, I don't think that's possible, but to show you who I am now, who I've been working to become. I looked at Elizabeth, who was standing a few feet away, pretending not to listen. She caught my eye and gave me a small, encouraging nod. I need time, I said to Logan. I need to figure out who I am now. Everything I thought I knew about my life was a lie. I can't just jump into something else without figuring out what the truth is. That's fair, Logan said quietly. I'll wait. I've been waiting for 3 years. A little longer won't hurt. He walked away, leaving me alone with Elizabeth and the weight of everything I'd lost and found. A year later, I stood at my father's grave, watching the flowers sway in the breeze. Elizabeth was beside me, her hand in mine, and Logan was a few steps behind us, giving us space. Miss you, Dad, I whispered to the headstone. Every single day. He knew about us, Elizabeth said softly. He knew we'd find each other eventually. That's why he was so desperate to tell you the truth. I'm glad he finally did. Elizabeth squeezed my hand. We're going to be okay. The two of us. I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd felt in weeks. Yeah, we're going to be just fine. Logan stepped forward, his face serious. Mia, I know you said you needed time, and I've tried to respect that. But there's something I need to tell you. Logan. Just hear me out. He took a deep breath. I've been seeing someone, her name is Claire, and she works at the hospital. She's kind, she's smart. And she's the first person I've genuinely cared about since you. I felt my chest tighten. Why are you telling me this? Because I needed you to know before you heard it from someone else. Logan's eyes met mine, soft and sad. I told you I'd wait, and I did for a long time. But eventually, I had to accept that you might never be ready, and I couldn't keep waiting for something that might never happen. I nodded slowly, processing this, that a part of me felt relieved. He was moving on, which meant I could too, but another part of me felt a twinge of something else. Regret, maybe. Or just the echo of a love that had never quite died. I'm happy for you, I said, and I meant it. I hope she makes you happy. She does. Logan smiled, a real smile, the kind I hadn't seen on his face in years. And I hope you find happiness too, Mia. You deserve it. He walked away, and this time, I didn't watch him go. I turned back to my father's grave, Elizabeth's hand still in mine, and let the silence settle around us. 2 years after the trial, I was still in Seattle, still working at the same school, still figuring out who I was, but I was different now, softer, maybe more open. I had Elizabeth in my life, and that made all the difference. We talked every week, visited every few months. She had moved closer, found a job in the same city, and we were slowly building the sisterhood we'd been denied for 30 years. As for Logan, I saw him at the grocery store once, a few months after he told me about Claire. She was with him, a pretty woman with curly hair and a warm smile, and he was pushing a cart full of groceries. He looked happy, content, and I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me. I wasn't in love with him anymore. I hadn't been for a long time, but I'd loved him once, and that love had shaped me in ways I'd never fully understand. I walked past them without saying a word, and I didn't look back. Because I'd finally learned the most important lesson of all. The only person who could save me was myself, and I'd done it. I'd survived the lies, the secrets, the heartbreak. I'd found my sister. I'd found my truth. And I was going to be okay.